Welcome to the Ken Keltner chapter meeting. We will be starting shortly. I'm turning off the recording until everybody is signed in. See you soon. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Ken Keltner virtual chapter meeting with Stew Thornley. Stew's been a SABR member since 1979. Yikes, that's really good. Longtime friend of the Keltner chapter. Twins official score. We're going to talk about official scoring tonight, probably all kinds of other things, and I'm sure you guys will have questions for him as well. A couple of things on Stu. I looked at his profile out on SABR, and his interests including, and now this is I'm doing them in the order from his profile: making prank phone calls, Minnesota baseball history, Halsey Hall chapter, ballparks, Minneapolis Millers, Graves, and the history of official scoring. Stu was the first person who I met in SABR who was very interested in the graveside thing. So I learned there's a bunch of you guys out there. It's still kind of spooky to me. The making prank phone calls, I think, is interesting. I hope this isn't a prank phone call from you tonight, Stu. I was going to start with my usual question, but I think I have to ask instead. Can you tell us about one of your more interesting prank phone calls or prank phone calls?
Well, first of all, I'm glad I grew up when I did before caller ID. I do even have a blog that's out there. Upon request, I'll send you the URL, called Memories of a Miscreant, and some of the things we did. You know, I guess it would be 1986 in the Don Vogel radio show in the Twin Cities. And it was kind of a wacky show. And when the Orioles were in town, they kept referring to them as those pecking Orioles, and seeing how close they could get to a real double entendre. And finally, I worked in sales at the time, driving around the Twin Cities. After about the second day of that, I was going by phone booth. So I called and said I was Cal Ripken. And he believed it, and they put me on the air. And they were playing that for the next 2 days on the radio. I got a recording of it because they were so proud that Cal Ripken had called in. So maybe that would have been my best one. And at least it wasn't the same as sending a pizza out to somebody's house, or, that's kind of nasty. People would send a taxi cab to somebody's house, but we worked our way up to sending buses out. It's kind of amazing. They wouldn't call back to confirm. And we had a Greyhound lined up to take a bunch of Viking fans to Chicago for a Vikings-Bears game. And then we watched that thing roll down Como Avenue and roll away empty. So that was my misbegotten youth.
And Cal Ripken's not going to call in and spoof you tonight, is he?
You never know. That would be good. I'm sure he has no idea of any of that went on.
Yeah. My usual question I like to start with, I stole this from Rob Nyer, is can you tell us about your earliest baseball memory?
I can remember watching the Twins probably in '61 with my dad on our little black and white television. The first game I went to was '62, and I remember the experience really well. But I can even remember watching the games and getting to know all the American League ballparks because we'd see them all.
Good. Stu, I think you've done enough of this. I don't even have to ask you questions about official scoring. You can just entertain us for the next half hour, 45 minutes. If anybody has a question, if you want to put it into the chat, I'll pay attention to that and ask it when appropriate, or just pipe in and ask the question if that works for you, Stu.
Yep, either way. And I've got the chat room open. I might see them. So yeah, go ahead and send them in. Usually when I do this presentation, it gets to be pretty interactive, not just talk for a while and take questions. And I am going to show plays. And if we were all together, you could raise your hand on if you think something's a hit or an error. But in this case, maybe shout it out and we'll see which side shouts louder or figure it out from there. This is great with the Keltner chapter. Bob Tholkus and I and Jeff Brubaker, who was from Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, some of you might remember Jeff, but he was going to school here. We drove down for a chapter meeting in Milwaukee. I don't know how many years ago, 20. And that was great until the drive home, which was kind of weather like we're having tonight. I'm going to also be doing this presentation a week from tomorrow. It's University of Minnesota Learning Life. I've done it live before, now we're doing it via Zoom. I guess it's lifelong learning, so a bunch of old people. And I have no idea what their background is on baseball, or if I talk official scoring to a general audience, I'll get into it sometimes just explaining what it is, but especially the difference between baseball official scoring and that of other sports. Other sports have official scores. All of us are recorders, and we're putting down what happened in some manner or another, recording it. I do the Timberwolves too. And we've also got a book, a pencil on paper for recording timeouts, fouls, and baskets and points, the things that affected the outcome of the game. And then there's other statisticians there who are compiling all the other things that don't affect the outcome of the game, but things like, the assists and rebound stuff and that. And, the great thing about baseball scoring is the sport is so well suited to keeping score. And I would think many of you also keep score at baseball games, going back maybe to a long time ago. That's how I started doing it. And there's no difference really in it. It's just having some way of keeping a good record of the play-by-play. And with official scoring at the end of the night, we used to fill out a form. It was just a detailed box score with the things of bats and hits and runs batted in, stolen bases, caught stealing. We don't have to do that anymore. We probably didn't have to for quite a while because we have the MLB.com Datacaster, and that gets sent in, and there's your official box score. We have to make sure everything's correct. But up until this past season, they were making us still fill that box score out every game. And people might ask about how to do it, and I just say however you want, whatever works. There's no particular style for keeping score, and a lot of people do it now on a computer, kind of a data entry form. I'm still do it on the same old grid that you'd get in the scorecard in your program. The one thing, and I'm going to start sharing a screen here, and we'll see how well this works. The one thing that is universal, if there is such a thing in official scoring, being universal, is the numbering. Is that up there? Nope, here we go. This familiar numbering system that we have. People might keep score in a lot of different ways, but definitely using this style. And one of the big questions that comes up as we move around there, starting with the pitcher and the catcher, and then from right to left through the infield, is why is the shortstop 6? It seems a little out of order. And I was always under the impression, and it's correct, that the shortstop, when they started numbering it, that went back in the days when the shortstop was more of a rover, when the first baseman, second baseman, third baseman played pretty much on the base, and that shortstop could go back or forth on either side of the infield, depending on who was up, go out into in the short left or right field. It's kind of like the extra fielder and slow pitch. Those of you who go back a long ways with slow pitch, remember when we had something called the short fielder, somebody would be in left center or right center field. But if you get a chance to read an article, that SABR 50 for 50 book, there's one of the most interesting articles in it is by Keith Olbermann, and I think it was first published in the SABR Journal in 2005, and it's entitled, "Why is the Shortstop 6?" And it really wasn't until the early part of the 20th century that got fixed as that. Even with the 1903 World Series, with a committee of official scorers from across the country, there were regional differences because for quite a while out west, that shortstop was still playing as a rover, and in the east, the shortstop had assumed that position as kind of a counterpart to the second baseman. According to Keith Olbermann, it wasn't until 1909 that we really zeroed in where the shortstop is 6. Now, the next question comes up, well, what about when we have something like this? This was just last night in 2019 at Target Field. Joey Gallo is up, and we can see what's happened on the right side of the infield. There's only 3 infielders altogether, whereas the other one, well, he's out here. That's Luis Ariz, who was playing third base and went out to left field. So they kind of formed like you'd now have with a softball outfield with the 4 outfielders. And in this case, this was the first time they put the shift on them. They kind of stayed in order in the infield, shortstop, second baseman, first baseman. Later on in the game, they swapped the shortstop and the second baseman. And, you know, we've seen a lot of that where that third baseman will swing all the way around and come over here. And people say, well, how do you score that? If this is the third baseman out there in short right field and he fields a grounder, you know, how do you mark that? Well, within your own scorebook, again, any way you want to do it. For official scoring, it's just if it's the grounder to the third baseman, wherever he is, he's just going to throws to first. That's going to be a 5-3. And in the report, it's an assist for the third baseman to put out for the first baseman. On my own, just because I like to, I usually just kind of scroll in there, shift, so I have an idea that something was different about it. We all know the Williams shift, but this is Dick Siebert of the Minnesota Gophers. And they even put an article in the paper back in 1966 when he pulled his left fielder and put him here near the first baseline, choosing to do so because he was left-handed. There were runners on first and second with nobody out. So they were expecting a bunt, and they brought him in there. And the batter did swing away, hit to the third baseman, who threw to the shortstop at third, who threw to first base. They got a double play out of it, and it was 5-6-3. But if he would have hit it this way, it would have been 7-6-3. And, you know, you look at that in your scorebook and say, what the heck happened? Because these players, unless they are actually swapping positions, they still retain the same position that they have. A week before that, Siebert had swapped as right and left fielders out. There was a right-handed batter, and he wanted his right fielder with a stronger arm over in left field. Now, in that case, it would be a total position switch when they're switching sides. But we're getting a lot of that now, of course, and it's who knows what they'll eventually do with scorekeeping on it. Well, you know, I got hooked on scoring games when I was a kid, maybe like many of you, and the Twins scorebook or the program would have that middle section with the grid, and it would have the players' names and numbers. My mom would always fill that out at the beginning of the game at Met Stadium, like a county stadium. You know, they had the numbers of the players up there all the time. These were basic scoreboards, which was nice. Today's scoreboards can do everything, and the problem is that they do. And all of a sudden, you're looking for a lineup, and they're putting the dang clapping Mickey Mouse hands or crap like that up there. So there's much better at County Stadium and Met Stadium. And I learned from in there how to keep score. And this is my first score sheet that I did, I think, with really using the whole system of the numbering and all of that. It's from 1963. My dad, am I sharing there?
No, not yet.
Okay. There we go. My dad just drew lines in the spiral notebook. I wrote in Aparicio, Gaines. I think I got Robinson spelled correctly there. And so I was happy I hung on to that. I found it a few years ago in some files. I still use the same system. I went through scorebooks. I would buy scorebooks, and then this is how I do it now. I just kind of design my own. If this one looks a little messy, it's from about 3 years ago. Look in the number 7 spot in the batting order. That's Andrew Romine. And you can see his positions he played: 7, 8, 9, 5, 6, 4, 2, 4, 1, 3. Romine played all 9 positions in that game. And to the left where I keep putouts and assists, I drew a bunch of lines in there because, you know, I had to track his putouts and assists for each position. And all that yellow highlighting is because I also had to track his plate appearances and what he did by what position he had in there. So that was kind of a fun game to go. But that's the recording part of it. You know that all you know is that the big part of the official scoring job in baseball is that you are not just a recorder like you are in other sports, but you're a judge. And you have to make decisions on hit or errors, and people get mad about that. And that's where the prominence of the job is. And I'm going to go back and show a couple of plays right now and let you all kind of, however you want to do it. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I've got some video links, but here I'm going to do a couple where it's going to be a link that's going to come up. Okay, I don't know how you want to vote, but raise a hand or.
I'm not seeing the video yet.
Oh, did that not work?
No.
Did
I just saw
anybody
the score sheet?
Oh, okay, never mind. Let's see. I'll.
I vote in favor of whatever you want, Stu. Oh.
Yeah. Okay, let's try this again. Whoops. Okay, now. I'll go here. Gonna go share screen. There we go. Are you seeing?
It's coming.
Yep.
Is this it? Okay. Well, you heard Dick's description. He didn't say whether he thought it was a hit or an error. When Dick Bramer and Bert Blyleven, if I call something a hit and they say it's an error, I always feel a whole hell of a lot better. I figure I got it right then. But I don't think he said this. So watch it and then yell out what you think if it was a hit or an error.
It's an error.
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 Hit.
Looked like an error.
Hit.
Thank you,
Error.
Carrie.
Okay, everybody yell at once, hit or error, and we'll see who's louder.
Give him
Error.
give him a hit on that.
Okay,
Error.
I did call it an error. This was
I always
this
get
was
it
a
wrong.
weekend in which they had 3 errors or three drop flies. I called one a hit, a little bit wind blown. That was a hit for the Twins on the next day, the Saturday. And then I called an error on Jose Abreu, and he had a little trouble with the pop-up right on the first baseline, and I called that an error. And then the Twins come over and they say, well, how come that other one's a hit and this one's an error? And I think, well, what do you want me to change the other one to an error too and take your hit away from it? It was awful. And Richard, you probably know this. The dear departed pitching coach for the Chicago White Sox. I'm not gonna miss him. He sent that one that I called a hit. He did send in for a review, and I will talk about the review system too. But Don Cooper wanted a lot of errors called when his pitchers were out there. And, you know, Don Cooper's been around longer than I was official scoring. I don't know how many different managers he survived. But on that one that we just saw, I called that an error on Ross Cordell. Twins came over, just asked about it respectfully. You know, he's leaving his feet, he's in the air, he's jumping. I said, yeah, I thought he was under control. I thought that might get sent in for a review. It didn't. The two the next day both did get sent in. I'm going to show another one here too, and see. Oh, okay. This is.
Not seen it yet.
Yeah, just hang on. I know.
Oh, sorry.
It's just, yeah. Okay, wait a minute. Here we go. All right. This is down in, you've seen Logan Morrison at bat. Is that right? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, this is down in Puerto Rico. Look at that bottom of the 16th. And Eddie Rosario's on first for the Twins.
So would it be fair to make a judgment based on the look on the player's face?
That's a good question. We use it sometimes.
Because he obviously says I should have had that because of the look on his face.
And there, that's the
Even a
best
little
look
kid
at
in
it
the
there where you
stands
can
pulled
see
his
that he
glove
just
up.
plain pulled up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his reaction was that, you know, one thing. Well, go ahead. Everybody yell out, hit or air.
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 Yeah, that's what I called it. And that's a good question. I mean, you go by a reaction. A lot of scorers have pointed out reactions of players. You know, there's one I'll show a little bit later on Felix Hernandez when he doesn't pick up a bunt and you can see an F-bomb coming out of him. But on the other hand, you know, players will, even if they try to make a great play and just barely miss it, they might have a reaction like, dang, I missed it. That one, Kipnis was obviously trying to set himself up, as they often do, and which can be a good thing. He turned towards second base. He was going to backhand it and then be in a good position to start the double play. And that's fine if you do it, but he pulled up a little early. And so that was an error. I'm happy that he did that because, well, then the Twins won it. Ryan Lamar singled home Rosario. It was a 16th inning. And I don't know, he might still be there if he hadn't done that. This was the series down in Puerto Rico, so we were pretty well crammed together. Usually we're not next to team officials. And in that case, though, I was next to Twins team official who said to me, after I called it an error, he said of Morrison, he could use a hit. And I just said, no shit, because he was hitting under 200 and he never did get his average over 200 that year. And that one got sent in for a review too. It was upheld as an error. So blame me for Logan Morrison hitting under 200 that season. I'm just gonna show a couple more things on a little history of official scoring. John Thorne had sent this to a few of us. This is one of the fashion course race course games. Sort of an all-star game between Brooklyn and New York back in 1858. And they use that familiar grid system like we are familiar with, but none of the codes, none of the hieroglyphics. You can see like in the third inning there for the leadoff batter, it just says ball to first base, not out. And I wonder why the heck do you even need to set up a system like that if it's going to be, all you're going to do is like write down what it is. And then it was Henry Chadwick, who's had so much to do with all of the development of the box score and statistics. And in one of his annual guides, I think this is from 1861, it's got something we're a little more familiar with. We're seeing just letters and numbers to code things. And I couldn't even tell you what happened in this. If we look at the first inning, the 1, 2, 3 at the bottom, that represents numbers of outs or hands lost, as it was called.
You're not sharing, Stu.
Okay. Sorry about that. This is, you're my guinea pigs. I really appreciate that because it's.
Yeah, Stu, do you have footage of that 1858 play? We can check on it.
I do. Yeah, of
Okay.
course. Here we go. It's a little easier, I think, if I keep these things up. Okay, here you go. You see what kind of looks like a familiar scorecard with the grids, but you look in there for the leadoff batter, Maston, in the third inning. It doesn't say a single to the first baseman or anything like that, just ball to first base, not out. It also doesn't say single or error because we didn't even have singles or errors at that time. And then Henry Chadwick started to develop a more sophisticated system. And here we see the top of the first inning and the three outcomes. And the 1, 2, and 3 at the bottom, that just represents the outs on who made which out. But look in Maston's at bat in the first inning, it has an 8 in there. Well, that's not the center fielder. That represents the fielder it refers to is the number 8 hitter in the opposing team's lineup. So this was really, really confusing. The letters signified different things, and sometimes it could be based on if it was the first letter of something, like F would be a fly. So I guess Maston flied out to whoever was in the number 8 spot in the batting order for the opposing team. Sometimes we use the last letter of something, like if it's an L, that means foul because it's the last letter of foul. And we see there Grum in the 3rd inning. What did he do? K.
Strikeout?
That represented the term struck, the last letter of the word struck. And that's the one thing that still carries over to all of us today is the struck, the K is strikeout. And this was a box score that Chadwick developed, and at that time, not much in it. HL means hands lost or out, and runs. And that's about the only way that they were officially tracking what they did. Doesn't tell you a whole lot. But by the latter part of the 1860s, we have a lot more columns. And look on the left side, the 3rd column over, first base by hits. Now we're finally getting into hits. And the last column there for the batting, it says first base by errors. So we've got hits and errors. Look at the fielding all the way over on the left. 24 errors in the game for the Atlantic team. That's how it was back then. But what was happening is that we were getting into that concept of the official scorer becoming a judge at that time by going by not just recording things, but having to make those types of decisions. And the whole history of official scoring went through a lot of phases. It got more structured in the 20th century when the Baseball Writers of Association would provide an official score for the games. And that started changing in the latter part of the century as newspapers were getting uncomfortable with having their reporters who might be covering that particular game, also having to make judgments. It was a conflict of interest. What if a reporter wants to interview a player after the game and something comes up and he decides, gee, I better give him a hit or he's going to be mad at me. Patrick Royce was with the Pioneer Press, and in 1976 he was covering the game for the Pioneer Press, and he even wrote up in his game story that there was some controversy with the official score. He didn't mention who that was, but he called sort of a borderline hit to the first batter of the game. And it was the only hit off Dave Goltz until 2 out in the 9th. So, and in fact, two years earlier, Goltz, right near the end of the season, had been in another game where he gave up with 1 out in the first inning, a borderline hit, could have been called an error, and it was the only hit of the game until 2 out in the 9th. So both Royce and Bob Fowler, the scorer before that, kind of got saved by another player getting a hit. They were really, it really does show how you can be on the hot seat. But as the newspaper started saying, no, you can't use our writers anymore for official scores, it started being other people, veteran baseball observers. It might be retired newspaper people who are no longer actively doing it. Tom Mee, the Twins public relations person, when he was kind of retired by the Twins in that role, he became the official scorer and did that for about 17 years. And then when that ended, that's when a couple of us came in and started doing it. That's when I got my start. And I'm gonna show you something from the first game I ever did. This is kind of hoping for a sedate game that would have nothing going on, but and it was that way for a while. And I don't know if this is going to come up or not. Yeah, here it goes. We'll get it. I'm starting to get the hang of how to do the screen sharing. It's just a little bit slow. Okay. Let me hit the pause. Whoops. There we go. Thanks for hanging with me on some of this stuff. No, I don't want that one. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this or not. I'm not getting. I'm not seeing it on here to share. Doggone. I think I've got some other direct videos I hope will work better, because I want to show some more videos and let you folks make hit or error decisions. But Jason Bartlett of the Twins was playing shortstop, and the batter Austin Kearns of Washington hit a hard one hopper. This is on the Metrodome with their spongy turf that's balls skipping everything, and I called it an error, and didn't really hear much that night, but the next day found out that Bartlett was kind of unhappy with it. And I just say that it's also the kind of thing that while I called it an error there, it's the same kind of play that nowadays I call it a hit. It was a short hop, came up on him a little bit. And one of the reasons that I've sometimes changed how I'm going to do things over time is just trying to be consistent with other scores and having that opportunity to discuss things. We've been meeting as a group since 2012 in New York. We look at plays together, we discuss them, and our main intent is to try to standardize our scoring so that we're all so that we're all kind of giving the players the same break, so that the scoring's not tougher in one city than it is with another. And there is a review system I'll talk about, and Joe Torre was originally the person who would make the decision on whether to uphold an appeal. A player or a team could appeal a scoring decision to Major League Baseball, and Torre would decide if he'd uphold the scorer's call or if he'd overturn it. And he was at our meeting one year and showed a couple plays just like the first tough one that I had, and indicating that when a ball comes up on a field or comes up past the glove, handcuffs him, hits him in the wrist or something like that, that's a tough one to make. So while I called that thing a hit in my first game and it didn't really get too much of a reaction, and I guess I've just I'd like to think I've gotten a little better at it or got a more refined eye after doing it for a while. But it's also just working together with the other scores. There are a lot of calls that get sent in every season now, and now we get a video on every one of them, and that's really, really helpful. They'll send out when there has been an appeal. We have a link that we can go to right away to look at the play and then decide how we'd call it, and then we'd see how the scorer called it, and then from that, if the call was upheld or not. And those kinds of things have really helped us to zero in. As I say, there's never going to be a fine line between hit and error. That line's always going to be fuzzy, but by doing what we've been doing, I think we've narrowed the band of that band of fuzziness. We've got it down to where fewer types of plays are falling into that no man land, that 50-50 type of call. And I've done some analytics on it. I've done this for an analytics convention. If you ever get the book, A Diamond to Praise by Craig Wright, he co-wrote it with Tom House. He has a chapter in there, a really interesting chapter on official scoring. He calls for outlawing the error. He doesn't really think it's significant. And this was in the 80s. And he did some studies to show how inconsistent scoring was across the different teams at that time in the different cities. And I replicated that study in about 2017. And at least from the looks of it, from what I did, it looks like we are getting better on standardizing the call. The multiple instant replays, that's a question that's on here. Have they changed scoring? I mean, are you talking about umpire calls, where they can, of course, do the review and have the umpire's call possibly overturned? That doesn't really affect us as an official score. I mean, if we call an error on a shortstop who's pulled the first baseman off the base and the first baseman makes a swipe tag and the umpire says he missed it and calls the runner safe, well, we might announce that that's an error on the shortstop or a hit if it was a difficult play. But then if the call gets overturned, the umpire's call gets overturned and all of a sudden it's out, well, then, we would just change it to a 6-3 and certainly no error or anything else.
It's Stu, the reason I asked the question is with more replays, you have more opportunities to see not on the, so you
okay.
see the plays more often. So, you know, years ago, you didn't see them as many. Does that change how you're making your calls or because you get multiple camera angles at your calls?
Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad you clarified that. And that's good too, because first of all, when we're in the ballpark, and it's been brought up that this past year we weren't, and it was tougher. It's good to see it live. And then we have monitors and it just shows whatever the regular television feed is. I like to keep my monitor on about a 6 to 7 second delay because that way, if there's a ground ball to the shortstop and he fumbles it, and batter is safe at first. Well, first, I don't want to rely on the replay. I want to make a call in my head. What's my initial reaction? Do I think it's a hit or an error? And then I'll just turn my head to the left and look at the monitor, and it's that play is coming up again because I've had it on a little delay. And either just confirm it or maybe cause me to give it another look or something. Usually it just ends up saying, yeah, okay, I thought that was ordinary effort. I thought it's error. I look at it again. Yeah, I don't see anything weird like a bad hop or anything like that. But where it's really, I wait for other angles on it is if you get hard grounders to the corner infielders, because the regular TV feed, the first look at it, you're not getting a good look. It shows the delivery from a center field camera, and then the ball's hit, and then it cuts away like to the third baseman. And by the time the camera cuts to it, that ball is by the third baseman. Now I did, you know, when I'm in the ballpark, I get a good first look at it, see the whole field. But if I want to look at it again and review it, in that case, I'll probably wait a little bit longer and wait until that comes around again or until they show a different replay angle. And I'd like to get one that shows the continuous action, the whole thing, not a cutaway. But more and more, the technology that we have is making it easier. You know, sometimes at the end of the inning, I might want to go back and review a play again when it's a little calmer and the game's not still going on. And it used to be I'd have to try to run the DVR back. And you know how doing that is. You run it back too far and then ahead too far. But now we've got some proprietary web pages we can go to and just click on a link and get that play immediately. We can get other information, StatCast information, talk about how that's affected things and what scorers think about it. And this year, it was really, really good to have. This didn't do us really any good live, but when we wanted at the end of the inning, look at a play again, because we had a full field camera. So we could see all of it was a high home camera. We could see all the fielders and the runners. And then we also had just a simulator. We could click on that and it would show little dots for the runners and fielders and show where the ball is. And that can be important because if you have a runner on first base and there's a ball hit up the alley and it's fumbled in right center field and the runner from first scores, well, is it a double with an error or is it a double with an RBI? Well, when we're live, that's something we try to watch and keep the eye on the runner, because if he's going all the way, not breaking stride as he goes into third, and okay, then it's an RBI for the batter. But if he starts to hold up, break stride, and then take off again after the bobble, well, then we know it's going to be a double, but with an error for no RBI. Well, it's great when you're in the ballpark and you can watch that, but when we're doing it from home and just watching it off television as we did this year, we really, really have to rely then on going back to that high home camera or the simulator to do things like that. So all of these tools are helpful. And it's a lot of we all had to use these things that we've got in this, it's called NORAD, our system for it. I don't even remember what that stands for, but there's a lot of different things that are in there. But I had been using it already because I was one who might look at something like exit velocity. That's a dirty word to a lot of the scores. That started coming up in 2015 with StatCast, when we were getting camera and radar-based analytics. And it took me a while. First of all, what is a really hard hit ball? And how does that affect how I'm going to call it? And the scores are right. We eyeball it too. You know, if a ball's hit really hard, we can see that. We should be able to see that with our eyes. But I kind of liked having the backup, especially if I had to defend a call. One time, the team had said to me that you should have called an error on the third baseman, and I said the damn thing was hit at 110 miles an hour. You know, rather than just saying that thing was really tattooed. That thing was hit at 110 to a corner infield. He doesn't have time to react. So I kind of liked it. Our other scorers, they didn't, because sometimes they were getting hassled just on that basis, that somebody coming to them and saying, gee, you called that thing a hit, or you called that an error, it's hit at 106. Well, yeah, if it's hit to the shortstop and it's had a couple of hops, the shortstop still has time to respond to it and all of that. But I'm finding some of these things useful. Another reason we want to keep an eye on base runners is that when a batter hits a grounder and it's fumbled, is it going to be an error? Even if it should have been fielded cleanly, well, could they have thrown the guy out at first on that or not? So I'm always looking, whenever there's a ground ball hit, especially left side of the infield, I'm watching the ball, but I'm also looking at how far down the baseline the runner is. Because there are times I've called a hit, even if a ball hit with ordinary effort wasn't fielded cleanly, because I don't know that the fielder could have thrown him out, or that it would have required extraordinary effort. But some of the things with the analytics, Ichiro, and he's one I did at the Metrodome, he chopped one to the left side, and Nick Punto went over from shortstop and put out his glove, and it clanked off it. But Ichiro was halfway down the line, across that halfway mark where that 3-foot box starts. And I thought, boy, there's just no way that he could have got him out with a routine play. I called it a hit. Nobody said anything. It was pretty well understood. But when he was with Miami a few years ago, he sent in a play where the shortstop for the Cubs, it was Russell, had charged a soft grounder, and I think on the transfer dropped it. And the scorer originally called it an error on the shortstop. And Ichiro had in all of this that it took 2.6 seconds for the grounder to reach the fielder. And Ichiro gets down the line in 3.9, which I can believe. We got somebody else out there, every time he sends in a review, he's talking about his elite speed and getting down the line in 3.5 seconds. That we don't believe. But yeah, Ichiro could get down the line in about 4 seconds. And so that would have meant that the fielder, had he fielded it cleanly, had to get the ball across the diamond in about 1.4 seconds. And then he cited another play later in the game where there was a throw from the shortstop that was 1.6 seconds. I was fascinated by it. I asked if I could get a copy of that review. And we do have things on our NORAD system where we can look at how fast a runner made it down the line, which doesn't, really make any, that doesn't tell you anything if it's a fly ball and he's kind of jogging down or anything like that. But I've asked if we could get like a typical sprint speed for every player in baseball. So when he's having to really beat cheeks down the first baseline, how quickly does he get there? Is it 4.2 seconds? Something like that. And then you can break down the rest of it, because that is a difficult judgment to make. When Buxton first came up, and it's a whole different thing. And there was a ground ball to Andrew Romine at shortstop, and he's trying to speed up the play, and he'd lost the handle of the ball just momentarily, split second, and he threw to first, and Buxton was across the base by about a step and a half. And I called it a hit, and I had people saying, gee, didn't you see the bobble? And I said, well, yeah, but would he have been out even if he hadn't bobbled it? And the answer is, well, I don't know. And I said, I don't know either. So I called it a hit. So that's some of both, not just the replays, but all of the types of information that we have that is real helpful to us. I see Peter is saying that you used 5 for shortstop and 6 for third base from Sid Mercer's scorebooks from the 40s. Yeah, I can imagine that would be something that it'd take you a while to get used to. Pete's been entering those games for Retro Sheet. and discovered that at least one New York sports writer was still doing it the old way. Eduardo asks how many calls a year are protested. I'm not supposed to give exact numbers, so 400 is not an exact number. That's what it is. And about 80% of them get upheld. And, you know, as I look at them, a lot of times I see a play and I see the scorer called it an error, and I'm thinking I would have called it a hit, and that's okay. But, and then I see that the scoring decision was upheld as an error, and that's okay also, because, you know, the review, and Joe Torre was not doing it anymore this past year, but, you know, he's kind of an appellate judge. It's not just how would he have called it if it were his call all the way. He's looking at, was it enough of an egregious enough scoring decision that it should be overturned. So about 80% of our calls do get overturned every year. Has the scorer lost his job for too many calls protested? Not that I know of. Most of the scorers are brought back. And one of the things is that having calls sent in, well, I guess it's more if you get a lot of calls overturned. And, you know, we get a little nervous about that if you get a call overturned. And I believe one score might have been dismissed just because it was considered that his job performance, his judgment on it wasn't real good. And there was a lot that went into it. One of the things they have assured us, you know, we score for one particular team, and if the home team doesn't like the calls or doesn't feel that you're helping the home team out enough, and they start making some noise about it. I think 40 years ago that was happening more, but they have assured us no on that. It's the teams are not going to influence us on it. I think at times there may have been some scores dismissed more for attitude or reasons like that. If the score doesn't get called back, I usually don't really know the exact reasons from it. A player or a team has 72 hours after the end of the game to submit a challenge, and I think they'd like to tighten that up. This is part of the collective bargaining agreement. Too. So if they're going to change that limit, most of them will come in with about a day. And an official scorer does have up to 24 hours after the end of the game to change a scoring decision too. You know, myself, I'd like to take my time on making a call and look at the replay if I think it will help me to make a call that I'm going to stick with. The biggest thing I want to do is make a call that I'm not going to feel like I have to change, even if somebody else feels like it should be changed. And I usually make it within a few seconds, because like I say, even if you want to look at the TV part of it, again, it's a grounder of the shortstop that's fumbled. I think that looks like an error. I look to my left of the TV. Yeah, I confirm that, and I announce it right away. I'll take longer on those hard hit ground balls past corner infielders just because it's harder to get a good replay look on it. And and I know some scorers who say, no, I want to sell my call because he sound more decisive when you make it right away. And you do, boy, you can sound really good just belting it out there, hit or ear six right away. But to me, if I kind of make it before I'm really sure of it, and then maybe between innings or after the game, I look at it again and I end up switching it. That's what I want to minimize, because I think you're going to, whatever credibility you build up by selling your calls, by doing it quickly, you can lose in a hurry if you're going to have a reputation of changing those calls too often. If people want to, you know what, let me see. I'm going to try something else with I'm going to try something else and see if we can show a play or two, because that's kind of more fun to do. I like doing this.
I had a question about the Phillips hit Randy Alzarena scoring play.
Okay, yeah.
Why was there only one error instead of two errors?
Ultimately, there were two.
Oh, there were. Okay.
Yeah, and how do I get, okay. Ultimately, there were two, Carrie. It changed a lot. I saw that and I'm right away looking and I saw the E8 as the only error. And then that got changed after the game to the error on the catcher. And then with that was, a missed out error. You can have either an advancement error, like what happened initially, who's that, Taylor in center field, initially booted the ball.
Yep.
And it got away. And then Rosarena tried to score as a result. And they would have had him at the plate, but Will Smith missed the throw. And that one was a missed out error, not just an advancement error, like there was additional advancement because he missed it. And that meant that the center fielder and the first baseman got assists on it as they threw it in. But then eventually after that, the second error was added to Taylor in center field, and that was for the advancement of the batter from first to second on the play. I mean, there was there was a misplay on Taylor's part, but it wouldn't have been an error if all it was that Rosarena was able to score, since he scored on an error by the catcher. But because there was another advancement in there too, there has to be an effect for each misplay for there to be an error. Does that make sense? So eventually it was a single with 1 RBI, second run scoring on an error by the catcher with assists to the center fielder and the first baseman. And then then there was the error on the center fielder, because even though it didn't matter at that point, the game was over. But the batter had, after the fumble, the ball had gotten by Taylor, he had gone from first to second.
Yeah.
So it took a little while, but they got the scoring right on it.
Makes total sense. I just didn't realize they had changed it later.
Yeah, and I know I was confused, and I kind of kept watching that to see what was happening with it. One of the StatCast things that comes up is something called catch probability. And I'm going to see, okay, I don't know if I can do this or not. Where the heck am I, just to get back to our, okay, I'm totally lost on where we are. Sorry, I'm hitting, let me close out some other things and try to get back here. I think I'm having too many things open. Well, I can see one little box up here in the corner. I'm trying to, there, bingo, okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Now let me go back. Catch probability, you'll see that. And that there was somebody made a catch on a ball that had only a 25% catch probability. That would probably be a 5-star play. And how does that affect us as official scores? And the answer is it doesn't, because that's not what we're really judging things on. And here's an example of that. If I can get this one to work. Thanks for your patience. Not that you have a damn choice. You got to be patient with me anyways, but okay, I'm going to go back because there's a really good one, if I can get this one to show, of a player who drops a fly ball, and I'll let you chime in on if it's a hit or an error. And okay, back again, I'm going to share a screen. I think I can show this. Okay, are you seeing a right-handed batter up there?
Yes.
Yes.
Beauty, okay, great, okay. That's Justin Upton. And now where's my play button?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oops.
Looked like an error on the outfielder.
Yeah.
One was an error there.
Error.
Yeah.
Normal activity.
E7. E7.
Yeah.
Anybody want a shutout hit? I don't think so, right? Yeah, that's as much of an error as you're ever going to see. You know, certainly no dispute on that. That's an error on Danny Santana. But I was kind of curious about it when Upton first hit that ball. I thought, oh boy, that looks like trouble. It's heading for the corner. Oh, look at that. Santana's there. He's gotten over there nicely. And then whoops. And so I wondered, since they were using catch probability, and I was finally able to track it down, the catch probability in that thing was under 50%, which would make it a 4-star play if he had made the catch.
Yeah.
So what does that tell us for making a decision, a scoring decision? Well, nothing.
It doesn't.
No, that might be fine, may or may not be fine, but it might be fine for evaluating outfielders, whether they use that for Gold Glove or whatever else they use it for. So it could be great for that. But what we're basing it on a hit or an error is what kind of position was the fielder in when he reached the ball? Was he in control? Was he having to extend, leave the feet, anything else? And certainly Santana was in total control. He was kind of speedy. I thought he did make a good play getting over that. If that had been Delman Young in left field, would have been a hit because Delman wouldn't have gotten there. And that's kind of one of the unfairness of even the definition of ordinary effort is that, you know, you get, is that you can get a good player who does put himself in position more for errors. So I have no problem with catch probability. It's just, it's not going to do us any good in terms of official score. And we're still kind of looking at it. Even that first play that I showed you with Cordell of the White Sox, having to leap, so it's a little more effort on that. You know, he was playing a tough fly ball, a line drive hit right at him, but in that case, I still thought he was in good enough control to be making that catch. And well, I called it an error. And there was, I would say, not, you know, marginal dispute on there. Go ahead and call out questions if you have them, and you can certainly put them in the in the chat room too. But if you have some questions, and I'm going to see what I can do about possibly bringing up just some other.
Stu, this quirky.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a long time ago as kids, but we used to always hear, you can't call an error on the guy if the ball didn't touch his glove.
Yep.
I mean,
several that haven't touched gloves. Yeah. Well, I still hear that all the time. Geez, I was at a town ball game this year where the right fielder completely screwed the ball up and it dropped behind him, and I hear somebody behind me, well, he didn't touch it. I guess it's a hit. And I just got my mouth shut. Like, no, that would have been an error. It's you know, it's uncommon for that to happen. Usually, if an outfielder misses or an infielder misses a fly ball, something else is at work, whether it's wind carrying it away or whether it's more often if it means sun. And we have been advised with the sun to just not, you know, if it's ball is lost in the sun, we don't call an error. We've been told that. But there's been a handful of times. Ben Zobrist went out from second base, and Lorenzo Cain was coming in, and I guess Zobrist was called. Well, he called him off, and then was nervous that Cain was going to run into him, and went back a little farther, and the ball just dropped beyond his glove. It wasn't touched. That was an error. So it's not that often, but I've definitely called errors, and sometimes I guess I've had to hear about them or somebody's complained, but yeah, it's not common for a ball to be called an error when there hasn't been touched. No, definitely, and not a rule, not even a tradition or a guideline or anything that we have on that. I think I could call this one up, and you're seeing somebody field punt. That's Felix Hernandez. But I'm going to take this back to the beginning. When you talk about looking for a reaction of a fielder, look at Hernandez. This is 2010, his Cy Young season. Okay. Fudge. Everybody just shout it out, hit or air.
Hit.
It's,
Hit.
it's,
I called an
Yeah.
error, and that's one of those I talked about earlier where, yeah, for sure, it should have been fielded cleanly. But the other part of it is, could he have gotten, that was Alexi Casilla, fast runner, laid down the kind of bunt that he wanted and was running hard to first. I called it an error, and I really heard about that one. And all I can say is that it did get reviewed and the call was upheld. This was in 2010, and the review system was different then. They used a committee, and there's 5 people in New York, 2 former players, 2 former general managers, and a representative of Elias Sports Bureau. And they would just, and at this point, teams had to send the play in for review. Teams did not want to overdo the privilege. And so it was, I think maybe 40 that season got sent in. It was a low enough number that they could use a committee, and they just would summon the committee to people. Hey, the next time you can get into the office and the Major League Baseball office, take a look at this play and put down if you think hit or error. And it was a split decision that, no, actually, this one was a, when the first 2 people came in and said error, they said, okay, we're not going to change it, because even if the other 3 had said hit, it's a split decision, and they wouldn't overturn it on a split decision. They just go along with what the scorer does. That could have been the other way. I definitely could have called it a hit, and if I had, I think I would have had a lot less grief. Not as many calls got sent in at that point because, as I said, it was a different system where the teams had to send it in, and they didn't want to overdo the privilege. So what would happen is that you would just get hammered on in the press box. It might be the coaches calling up to complain, and it was a poor PR person for both teams who got stuck in the middle. It would then have to come over and tell you somebody's mad, and some of them were friendly, some of them not as friendly. When in 2012, and that was as a result of it going into the collective bargaining agreement with the new system, a lot more calls get sent in, and that's stressful when you find out a call's been sent in and you have the opportunity to respond to why you called it that way, and then wait and see if it's upheld or overturned. There's a little stress on that, but I'd say I'd like the system now because it's really reduced the stress level in the press box of just getting hammered on. And that one, I really heard about that one. It was upheld, which actually doesn't make anybody any happier other than, okay, good, I got upheld, but the team can still be mad about it. Dave Weller asked, what's the toughest call you ever had to make? And I answered that, any fly ball hit to Delman Young. Delman would usually catch him, but a guy like, Oswaldo Arcia was tougher because he could miss fly balls, but not miss them in such a, where he's camped under it and just drops it. If you remember, well, some of you might remember a game against the White Sox in the 9th inning where Kepler dropped a can of corn. Well, yeah, hey, that's an easy call for a score. That's an error, but some get twisted, turned around, don't take a good route. Those things are kind of tough. But overall, what the toughest kind of call is sometimes is just, well, what's the last tough call I had? It might be an infielder having to make a throw to first while on the run, not in total control or anything like that. So it kind of varies just on what's been the latest one. This turned out to be, if I can do this one, not a difficult call, but let's talk about it. Here we go. Starting to get the knack of that. Adam Jones of the the Orioles.
Mm.
Hit or error?
Oh,
Yep.
Normally called a hit.
Yep, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Normally called a hit, and that's why it's a hit. We don't like it, you know, and in that case, I did send that one in myself just to ask for it to be reviewed, and they sent it on to Joe Torre informally, and he said, no, hit. That's a hit, just because that's the way it's called.
Mhm.
And in that case, I did think there was more culpability on one of the players on Span. First of
Yeah.
all, the center field to take control. Secondly, it was close to him. I guess the other side of that, there's Span's already had a concussion, and that's Josh Willingham, and he's hearing his footsteps. And no, you're not going to want to get run over by Josh Willingham.
Yeah.
But just more the way it is. That's a hit. We don't like it. That happened in 2012, and it was the first time that we had gotten together to watch plays together as a group, and so we all said, hey, we want to start calling that an error. You know, there's no team error that we can put it on, but we want to assign somebody some responsibility. We all had this big rush of bravado. Yeah, we're going to call an error on somebody. Well, that came up, and I called it a hit, but I said I'm going to send that in and ask.
Mhm.
And it, the answer pretty much was, okay, no, you're gonna call that thing a hit. That came from Joe Torre. That's kind of the official word. That is to some degree also what will influence us on it.
Hey, Stu, there was a question earlier.
Yeah.
What teams have a good reputation for making the official scorer's life easier? Or I thought automatically the flip side. Is there any team out there just generally a pain in the butt?
I purposely didn't ask it that way because I didn't want to put.
Yeah, I kind of, I saw that and I kind of interpreted that's probably what it really was asking. And I'm obviously going to be careful with that one. But, overall, no, I don't think so. Sometimes over the years, it's been who the particular PR person was for the team. And because some I found to be bigger pains than the other. And at least they kind of, certainly with the visiting teams, they tend to be different people on who they might send in that season or change over time. I will say this with the Twins, Dustin Morris has done that job since 2012. And he's not shy about letting you know if he disagrees, but he's never, ever been out of line.
Mhm.
He's always respectful. And, we can disagree and maybe even, not be feeling too good about one another at the time, but that's understood at the time. He's told me before that he at least likes the fact that I listen to him. He comes over and asks, I don't just shut him down or anything like that. I'll listen to it. And, I know one time he just, it was on a grounder that Torrey Hunter hit near the end of his career, and I called an error. And he came over and he said, I don't think that third baseman was, I said, the third baseman was in control. He said, you call that in control? I said, yeah. And I just got the, okay. And he walked away. And I knew the okay wasn't, oh, okay. I understand. It was, no, okay. Maybe with a roll of the eyes or something. That kind of stuff. I'll just say this. It's my job as a communicator and my regular day job. It's helped me with that. Just, we don't have to agree with the other side. I think so many of us there, we get in an argument, or not an argument, but a difference of opinion with people in the community on whether fluoride is good or bad in the drinking water. And we support fluoride, but some people have strong opinions against it. And some people are trying to, convince the other person why they should think that it is okay. Well, I know I'm not going to convince some people. They're pretty set in it. And in that case, I would rather just kind of listen and be respectful and hope that we can at least walk away not thinking too many dirty thoughts about each other. So it's the idea is to at least understand and listen and not necessarily try to convince. And I've learned that with official scoring. I don't, and ultimately, if they want to send it in to the league to review, they can do that. But in the meantime, Dustin walked away where he clearly didn't share my opinion on it, but I wasn't going to go chasing after him because he knew he wasn't going to change my opinion. I wasn't going to change his. He's been very good to deal with. I did mention Cooper was kind of tough as a pitching coach just because he was very loyal to his pitchers, and which meant kind of protecting his pitchers. And if you called a hit for the Twins and a run scored and it was going to affect the ERA, he was probably more likely to send it in or say something.
Mhm.
Here's one I think we can watch.
Hmm.
You seen it? Is it up on the screen? It was the fence. He's going into the fence onto the warning track. I've got an excuse for why I called it that way, but whatever they say about excuses and stuff like that. So I won't use it, but it got overturned. And the thing is, it's good. I've had a couple times I've had calls that overturned that I just didn't understand why they were overturned. But on the other hand, something like that, I could say, yeah, okay, I can really see why that should have been a hit. And then it helps me with the next call. Or if I call something, a hit and I get challenged on it, that I can refer back to a play like that. And it helps. That's where I say it kind of helps to standardize it. Even your own calls that get overturned, try to look at it. Not all scorers do. Some scorers don't let go. And that's, we think that the core skill of an official score is is a judgment on a hit or an error. And that's a core skill. I say a core skill is dealing with the stress and even the anxiety and being able to let go of a play. And there's a couple scores, I won't say who, but I don't think let go of it very well. So even if I get overturned and I don't understand why, it's to try, let it go. If some people just haven't stuck with it because that stress or that anxiety level is too high for them, and good that they recognize it and do that. Nothing wrong with that. And early on, I didn't know how am I going to handle it, and so just I don't know, learn over time, just to let things go. And I'm not always good at letting stuff go, but I can do that. Dan's asking about the team error, and I think it was Leonard Coppett, who was kind of a proponent of that. Well, at our first meeting in 2012, the scorers indicated they'd like to have a team error. And that's going to require the rule makers, and any changes in the rules require, including the scoring rules, require player association approval. So it probably won't happen. There are certainly times it would be nice to have that. You wait until that ball that dropped between Willingham and Spann. Wait until I think happens in the 9th inning for the first hit of the game. Then maybe we'll get the team error. Until then, probably won't happen. Fred's asking about, and we got asked this a lot, the base runner, the auto runner in the 10th inning or extra innings. Yeah, if that run scores, it's unearned. And if that runner is replaced by a fielder's choice, like let's say they try to bunt and the pitcher throws to third and they tag the guy out. Well, now the runner who's on first is still potentially unearned. That's like a swap of the runners. On the other hand, if the guy's on second and there's a single to right field and the runner from second tries to score and is thrown out, okay, that erases the effect of an unearned run. The runner who singled and is on first, if he scores, that would be an earned run. So a lot of unearned runs, a lot of losing pitchers this year with unearned runs. And, the most interesting one was the Twins' final regular season game. Caleb Thielbar got the loss. He faced 4 batters in that game and he retired them all, and he was the losing pitcher. Thielbar pitched a 9th, 1-2-3 9th. And then he was on the mound to start the 10th, and Lorenzen was the runner for the Reds, and he got a pop out, and then he was taken out for Romo, and Romo gave up, I think, 3 walks and 2 hits. Lorenzen scored the go-ahead run. They scored a couple of runs, but the go-ahead run was charged to Thielbar, and so he was the losing pitcher. So, just additional weirdness with some of this too. And Fred's at,
Stu, the question I saw from Fred also, how do you score the runner being put on second?
Oh, how do you do? Again, any way you want. I just, in my grid score sheet, I would just go back to whoever that runner's going to be. Draw on the 2 lines from first to second, from home to first to second, which is how I do it. Well, I normally might put in a couple of lines to indicate double or something else. In that case, I think I just put an X. Same thing, kind of like with a shift and how you want to do that. With your scorebook, it's yours, and however you want to mark things, just as long as it works. And at the end of the game, you can reconstruct the play-by-play and the stats and all of that. Richard is asking about World Series and playoff games, and this year that's changed over the years. That's changed over the years from when they had the Baseball Writers Association, 3 scores for a World Series. When we had the All-Star game here, we had 3 scores, and one was one was the baseball writer representative. They're not doing that anymore. And in the World Series, it's just going to be 1 score, and normally that would just be the regular score for that home team. And this year it was in Texas, and after all of the scoring at home, even through the first round of the playoffs, I think even the second round of the playoffs, I don't remember because the Twins weren't in it, but by the league championship series, when they went to the bubbles, San Diego, LA, Houston, Texas, the local scorers were doing it. So that was different this year.
What I went. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it was different this year, but normally it would be
Just
now it's going to be just 1 score, but it's going to be for that team.
And were those scores in the bubble at the ballpark, or
They were.
still?
Yeah, it was from the league championship series on. So the final 2 sets of series, so the scores were back in the ballpark. Fred has pointed out that you can have a perfect game, but a team could lose a perfect game, and yes, that was possible. Those of you, if you enjoy this stuff and you're in SABR, let me know if you want. I'll make sure that you get on in the official scoring committee, and we have a newsletter, and you'll get notices of the newsletter when it comes out. And that is something, or if you go to the SABR website, get to the official scoring committee, and just go to the latest newsletter, because that's in there. But yeah, it could happen if you got a scoreless game into the 10th inning and team has had no runners, and then you start it with an auto runner, and he gets pushed around on a couple of outs, and they win the game 1-0. But the pitcher or pitchers are still credited with a perfect game. That question was kind of settled a little bit this year. I think in the official scoring committee newsletter, when I answered that question, I cited a minor league game where something like that almost happened, and I don't remember the details of it. Another question we often get, not just in the wacky year when we've got the automatic runner, can a team that has a perfect game have an error? Any of you ever wondered about that? So if the Twins pick a perfect game, if Barrios goes out there and retires all 27 batters, but somebody, Sano drops a foul fly ball for an error, is it still a perfect game? And yet it absolutely is, because it has nothing to do with that. It's a matter of that nobody reaches first base safely. So if there's an error on a foul pop-up, and then the batter goes out anyways, that could happen. And the same idea, I guess, with this auto runner too, is that if that batter didn't reach base, he was just put there. So you could still have a perfect game. It's kind of hoping it might happen this year.
Yeah, wasn't there a dead ball game like that? I think Ruth started, walked somebody and was out of the game, and it was Ernie Shore who relieved and got, he picked the runner off and then got 26 outs, so he was credited with a perfect game.
Yeah.
I think that's still considered a perfect game.
Well, some committee in 1991, they had them, among other things, come up with official definitions of no hitters. Not that that was needed. You know, that was a committee that was also sorting things out, like the difference in schedule and saying, no, Roger Maris is the home run record holder. We're not having, you know, Babe Ruth with 154. And they took that one off the roll of perfect games. And also Harvey Haddix. And, you know, it was taking a lot of, at the time, there really wasn't an official definition of a no-hitter. You know, what happens when a game is shortened by rain? And, well, the pitcher gets a shutout, gets a complete game, but usually that would kind of go under another category of a rain shortened no-hitter. And then the ones that kind of went the other direction, Harvey Haddix or Jim Maloney, you know, Jim Maloney has twice pitched 10 hitless innings. One time won the game and kept the no-hitter. The other time in the 11th inning, he gave up a home run. But, you know, just kind of in how they were dealing with things there, like when you'd hear or see it in the paper that among pitchers with 3 no-hitters, Bob Feller, Sandy Koufax, Jim Maloney. And if you looked in the Sporting News record book where they listed the no-hitters, they kind of listed them prominently, but pointed out. It was finally the 1991 committee that lopped off the short end and as well as no-hitters that were broken up in extra innings. And with Ernie Shore, it goes down as a joint no-hitter with Babe Ruth. Now, on the other hand, under the rules, Ernie Shore gets a shutout. If a pitcher comes into a game, a relief pitcher, before anybody is out, and nobody scores in the entire game, he goes a distance, he gets credit for a shutout. So that's one where Ernie Shore would get credit with a shutout, but it's a combined no-hitter. Yeah. How are we doing? Anybody other questions? Either want to chat or just chime in here?
Stu, I had one earlier about the shifting of positions, and I guess the way I worded it, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have an opinion of how, and I guess a better way to ask it might be, has the committee or at the meetings in New York, has there ever been a discussion of how to handle a situation where, like, if the third baseman's playing out in short right field and it's ground ball out there is reflected as a 5-3 put out, but there's no indication that the third baseman was actually playing way out there. And the ramifications, I don't know what that would have for a retro sheet. I'm sure someone in this group probably knows, because I know they like to look at, I believe, score sheets to reconstruct ball games.
Yeah, and nowadays, retro sheet just gets the play-by-play. I think they have for a number of years. You know, they were like Peter doing it from a scorebook from the 1940s. You know, because that's how they had to do it back then. And at least they didn't. You know, you had the Williams shift or something, but I don't think it was fielders flopping around like that. No, we haven't talked about that at our meetings. There was one. We have conference calls about every 3 weeks among the advisory committee with Laurel Trieb, who's our boss. And one of the scorers brought it up that maybe we should find a way to mark it in our score sheet if that third baseman is playing out in short right field, and you know, that a 5-3. And I just, well, it's not really anything we have to do. The only thing we're going to do as official scorers is put in an assist for the third baseman and a put out for the first baseman. So, you know, we don't have to do anything more than that. Other services and how they want to do things. And one of the things is that the data caster, the stringer who's entering it for game day for MLB.com, will be marking the location of that ground ball. So even if it's a 5-3 and you know, you're marking the dot for where it was hit out in short right field, and how that really translates into any kind of a play-by-play, or, and I don't know if Retro Sheet, they're just getting the play-by-play that's sent in, but it doesn't really indicate on that. So I don't know if over time some of the different sports services will figure it out. It's interesting with the there were reports, not at the time, these were kind of after the fact stories of the Williams shift. And that in Boston, he got a few hits when the second baseman was playing out there in short right field. So they brought everybody around to the right side of the infield, and they put the second baseman out there. And a couple of times, the second baseman fumbled a ground ball, and the Boston scorer called it a hit. And his reasoning was it was hit into hit territory. And, you know, I guess I'd just say, well, back then I can kind of understand they didn't really even have a good way of discussing what do you do when somebody fumbles a grounder out there and it should have been fielded and the batter thrown out. But that was an interesting thing, I thought. And, you know, nowadays we do. Well, somebody fumbles a ground ball. Well, heck, if he's out there, it probably means that he was, you know, in a position to be able to. It's different because now he's having to field it on grass instead of on dirt. You know, if it hits the lip of the grass and dirt and takes a bad hop, that's something different. But no, just as far as how we're doing things, so far it really isn't a concern for official scores. The only thing is making sure that we know who it is, and also was there an actual switch of the fielders, or is it just one fielder moving to a new position?
If you don't mind, a little bit of a crazy question, and I emailed you this a couple summers ago. I wish I had a video, and I'll try and describe it, but there's a runner on second. Guy hits a line drive into the left center gap. The center fielder dives. The ball is in his glove, but the ball then takes the glove off the hand as he hits the ground. The ball stayed in the glove. The left fielder came over, picked up the glove with the ball in it, while the runners circled the bases. And the umpires were all standing around like, what do we do? What do we do? And they gathered, and in the end result, they said the 2 runs scored. So the 2 runs score, I get. How do you score that? Is it a hit? Is it an error? Who's the error on? Because the left fielder really was kind of the cause of a lot of it, just standing there with the glove. But it just struck me as, boy, how would you score that?
Well, the first part of it, you know, if a guy's diving and he gets the ball in the glove, but the gloves comes off, and that part's the umpire call. It's not a catch. And, you know, I mean, if he's diving, I wouldn't call an error on that part of it. So I guess I'd have to see, you know, but if the, let's say the left fielder just, yeah, it'd be a home run, I think. You know, if the left fielder was then thinking he hasn't seen a call and he's thinking, hey, I'm holding the glove and the ball up, showing you that it's what was it we had this year with it was an extra base advance because Rosario thought a ball was out of play. The ground rules at target field, that limestone wall in left field, even on the foul territory side, but a ball hit in fair territory, it bounced up, not into the stands, but against that limestone wall, came back down. And Rosario just picked the ball up and was thinking it was a ground rule double when the ball was dead. And I think I was scoring that game. I guess it was just treated it as a whatever it ended up being, wherever the runners got to with that. I would kind of think with the same thing. Whether it's Chuck Knobloch standing on first base blowing a bubble or something like that. You could call it a fielder's choice too, but if it's, I think for what you described, probably would be a home run.
We are at the 90 minutes, folks. Other questions? If not, Stu, thank you. This was fabulous. I knew it would be, so I appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging with me with all the, I'm kind of learning how to flip with this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. couple of quick reminders. We have a meeting on November 24th. It's a Tuesday at 7 p.m. with the Brewers VP of Minor League Operations, Tom Flanagan. We're calling it Down on the Farm. He's been with the team forever, starting as a bat boy. He can talk about the 2020 season, and they just went through their player development program here in Arizona. So he may have some words of wisdom on how that went. So that's coming up on the 24th, and I'm looking forward to that. I've been working on that one for a year. And our book club meeting will be on Wednesday, December 9th. We're reading Big Fella by Jane Levy, and the bonus on that is Jane is joining us at the book club meeting, which should make it for a very, very interesting meeting.
I think it's Levy.
Levy? Yep, I think you're right. I've been trying to figure out how to pronounce that one. So
I looked it up. I finally found someone that was speaking it.
Levy.
Levy.
Okay.
It's like heavy.
Yeah. No, that makes
Dennis,
sense.
you're going to send that because you've got the rights now to email the Halsey Hall chapter on that.
Yes.
Too. I'm going to announce it in our newsletter, but you'll send out a link for that. Thank you for having the Halsey Hall chapter in here too. And I think this is great when we've occasionally been able to have in-person joint meetings, but nowadays we can do that a lot easier.
One of the advantages of the Zoom is that we can have speakers from all over the country and people coming in from all over the country join in. So that's wonderful. We just missed the time at the bar afterwards. Any other questions for Stu? If not, I want to say thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Hope to see you on the 24th. Take care.
Good job. Good job, everyone. Thanks, Stu.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stu.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.